and I'm in the search metrics team. And the search metrics team's job, as you might imagine, is to measure the search experience. So what we do a lot of is trying to measure search results quality. One of the reasons that I'm talking to you today about crowdsourcing is that's been a very effective tool for us in particular. So crowdsourcing has been very useful for us in terms of measurement of search results, measurement of search quality, and measurement of all sorts of other algorithmic content. So there's three things that I want you to take away from this. So I kind of expect that you guys know a little bit about crowdsourcing. I see some folks in the room, and if you don't, feel free to shoot a question to me later on. So I just want to talk to you, how can you actually increase the impact of crowdsourcing within your own business? So the first step is that you should really be Q to your customers' James Bond. And research is important, so don't skimp. You should treat your vendor relationships like a marriage with one important difference. So doing these three things is going to help you be a crowd guru, which will help you improve your business through leveraging crowd data. So the first step in becoming a guru is, of course, to have someone who's kind of your guru icon. And mine is actually Q from the James Bond films. So we'll get started looking at Q and why he's so interesting. So Q is a guru, right? James Bond is awesome. He's cool. He's suave. He's debonair, and he's got the great Scottish accent. But what is it that any kid thinks is actually the coolest thing about James Bond movies? And it's the gadgets, right? So James Bond has these cool, super awesome, high-tech gadgets, exploding pens and watch lasers and all sorts of awesome, nifty gadgets. And all of that stuff was developed by Q Bridge. So that's why Q is kind of my guru icon. So he's the one who's actually developing all of these cool toys that keeps James Bond alive to die another day. So I always kind of thought that Q was really the real hero of James Bond movies, in much the same way that R2-D2 is really the hero of all the Star Wars films. So I'm really nerding myself out here, but that's okay. So I mean, you could actually say, right, that the only reason, you could say it's only through the work of Q Branch that you only live twice. So anyway, sorry. All right, I promise that's the last. All right, it's not actually the last James Bond pun, but it'll be the last one for the slide anyway. So what do you think that it is that makes Q so awesome, right? He's always prepared, he has the right tool for the job, and he knows his customer's business. So why should Q be your role model? So he invariably knew what James Bond needed, right? So he knew James's business perhaps better than the secret agent actually knows himself. He's always got the right tool, no matter how esoteric, and he's always prepared, right? So James Bond, you're heading to the Alps, we'll put the skis on the Aston Martin, right? You're going to the Caribbean, submersible kit for the Lotus. We've got bad guys in the front, we got rockets for that. Bad guys behind, we have oil slicks. Bad guys in the car, ejector seats. So I don't actually expect that you need ejector seats when you're crowdsourcing, but removing spammers is really quite a satisfying experience. So for both your kind of internal gurus, there we go. For both your internal gurus and your external crowdsourcing providers, you should really know your customer's business, know what they want, know what they need, have a selection of tools at your disposal, and basically be ready to go to the wall, select a vendor, grab the task that you need, put in your data, and go. Right? So your job is to kind of help your customers look good. Figure out what they need, modularize the process, and you can be ready for anything. So now you might be asking yourself, I do want to be more like Q, but how do I get started? So I'll tell you really. The first step is to do research. Now, so what is it that, why is it do you think that Q is able to figure out how do I put a rocket into a leg cast? How do I make my Aston Martin invisible? How does he know how to do these things so that they work when this 00 secret agent needs them to? Q researches. Q Branch, they spend hours tuning and testing and trying to figure out all this stuff. How do we put lasers into the ghetto blaster? How do we make lasers small enough to fit into your watch? So they're doing all of this research, and what you should be trying to do is trying to figure out if you A, have the right question, B, with the right workers, and 3, if you're using the right data. So it can kind of seem like a drain on your day-to-day business, but I can assure you that in the long run, it's going to bear a lot of fruit for you. And really, in the long run, the long run is really what gurus are all about, right? So you shouldn't just worry about short term, you should worry about what's going forward. So the first step in your path to research enlightenment, ensure that you are asking the right question. So this particular pretty chart is a set of search result judgments. This graph is of our NDCG, which is something that you don't need to worry about what that actually means, but it's basically just a measurement of our search result quality. And as you can see, we've got several different colors of line here, in what may be Roy Jibev order. And what you can see, so no art students in the room, it's fine. So what we can see is that you can't see very much, right? There's actually not a whole lot going on. I can't tell the difference between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So, what we're trying to figure out is that we lacked differentiation from our crowdsourcing. So what we can see is that all of this stuff it's also very tough to see because the numbers are very small, but the top NDCG, right, the top score you could have is a 1. And we're at over 0.9 here. So we've got kind of a ceiling effect. We're very undifferentiated, and that's really a problem for us because now I can't tell the success of one algorithm over another algorithm. So what we figured out was that we needed to ask a different question. So we went from asking about, are these search results relevant, to are these search results, or excuse me, not is the search result relevant, but would you buy this? If you were searching for iPod, would you buy this iPod? Because it turns out that if you just ask about relevance, people think, oh, well, that's an iPod. It doesn't matter if it's broken, first generation piece of junk that's been put through a paper shredder. What they care about is that it is an iPod. Yeah, sure, it's relevant. But when you ask them, would you buy this, turns out that they don't like the broken item as much as they like the brand new, shiny in-box item. And so that means that we start to see a little bit more differentiation. So we started asking, would you buy this item? And this is what you see. So what we've got here is we can see finally that our time ending soonest sort is a lot lower down. Overall, everything is lower down. It doesn't go above 0.9. And there's actually about a 15% increase in differentiation between a couple of these search variants. So what we can see is that we're actually increasing differentiation by spending this time doing the research. So again, that's sort of, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to actually take time away from your core business and focus on research, but it does kind of present some value in the long run. So we've done lots of other changes too. So we've got different template changes. So we've tried different rating scales, 3, 4, 5-point rating scales, but not 6 because that's ridiculous. We've tried dynamic AJAX presentation layers, static HTML presentation layers, different options on our rating scales, experimented with adding and subtracting information in the template. Basically anything that you can think of that we show to our workers, we have actually tried different variations of that. Not everything has been successful, but then again, not every Q-branch invention really makes it to the 007 arsenal either, so it's just something that you can expect to happen. Not everything is going to be a winner. So, of course, you can't measure anything in crowdsourcing without a crowd. So the next step is to ensure that you've got the right workers. So it seems like a really simple idea, doesn't it? Of course I want to have the right workers, but it's actually a little tricky in practice. So the step one is really make sure that you're removing the bad actors. So our team worked with our largest vendor, Crowdflower, to help figure out ways to block spammers. And we measured their inner rate of reliability. We did a bunch of offline metrics. We did a bunch of online metrics. We added gold. We changed how gold works for us, including hidden gold, training gold, all these different streams of gold that we could actually, and gold are just known answers, right? They're answers that we know. And if the worker doesn't get them right, then they're removed from the job or potentially given more training material so that hopefully we can get them kind of brought up to speed. So we've done lots of different stuff around that. In doing so, we actually increased trust. Another thing that we've done is we've actually removed entire countries from our roles. So we had countries that were just rife with spammers, and I won't name any names, but there's several countries out there that we just completely removed. And as a result, our trust has gone up, and we are a lot more confident in our results. So another step in finding the right workers is to really kind of understand, understanding the worker's cultural frame of reference, right? Even if they speak the same language, they may not really understand what you're talking about. So which one of these is a better match for jumper? All right, there's lots of different meanings for the term. And so if I just gave you the query jumper, would you really know what I'm talking about? Well, if I've got an English set of search results, then maybe I want to use UK-based judges. So that's one thing, right? So understand your worker's cultural frame of reference, and then the next step is specialized knowledge, right? So specialized knowledge can be really kind of tricky. So this example here, One of these is an MP carburetor, and the other is a Solex carburetor for 69 Volkswagen. Any guesses as to what the difference is between the two of them? Anyone? It's about 500 bucks. So looking at them, I can't tell which one's which, actually. I'm pretty sure the one on the left is actually the Solex and the more expensive version than the MP. But in this case, it doesn't really matter. The question is, do you know what it means yourself? Do you expect your crowd to know what the difference is? So that's a fairly specialized market. So motors requires some specialized knowledge. But it is not just motors, right? There's other verticals too. So what we could take a look at is maybe from the world of fashion. You know, can you guys tell the difference between these two shoes? These two pairs of shoes? Yeah, so all the ladies are like, yeah, of course. No. Some of the guys too, it's cool, whatever. I make no judgments. The difference here is, again, about $500. It just sort of worked out serendipitously. I can't tell the difference, but apparently having this red sole on this pair on the left, that makes a lot of difference. That red sole's worth about 500 bucks, maybe more. So what's the difference between a good and great search result, the good and bad search results? And so the question is, well, of course it depends on the query, but it also depends on your workers' frame of reference and their specialized knowledge, right? So I don't know a lot about fashion. I couldn't tell you that. I could tell you the difference between Volkswagen carburetors because I know about Volkswagens. So to understand, like, what are the needs of your workers, what are their specialized skills, guess what that takes? Research. Yay! So I've discussed template, discussed the crowd. Now the final leg of our research triumvirate, and that's the right data. So getting the right data, of course, means not having errors, right? That's kind of easy to say, but a little bit tricky to accomplish. We've actually gotten halfway through tests before realizing that we were actually testing the wrong algorithms. So we put processes in place to prevent that kind of dumb mistake from happening. So, you know, we go from sort of one failure to one success, right? Or as I like to say, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So you make mistakes, you fix the process so that you don't make those mistakes again. So even still, it's easy sometimes to have a mistake sneak through. So one of the things that we've taken a look at are, you know, different queries. So what we've got here is two different search algorithms, both for the query iPod. Or iPhone, excuse me. And what you probably can't see because it's very, very tiny is that the results are exactly the same for the top 10. So that's not particularly useful, is it? So we got the same results. I probably shouldn't be bothered with sending that to the crowd. I'm going to spend some money judging something that tells me absolutely nothing. I mean, it'll tell me how good both algorithms are for the query iPhone, but do I really need to know that? If there's no difference, there's not going to be any difference on the back end either. So let's not send that. So let's send this query instead. This is the query animal perfume. And I'm not sure exactly what that query means. It could mean that they're looking for a brand name of perfume which is called Animale, which animal with an E on the end. Or it could be that they want their dog to smell nice. I don't know. I make no judgments. But what we can see is we've actually got different results. And you may even be able to spot that from back there, that you see some well, anyway, they look a little different. So maybe this is a better result to send to the crowd. Right? Maybe the crowd is going to be able to make hay out of this differentiation. So what we did was we found a bunch of queries that have differentiation. So we found our most highly differentiated queries, and we started using those to send to the crowd. It doesn't necessarily save us a lot of money, but what it does save us is it saves us a lot of time. And as John is about to remind me, time is very important. Right? So when we're doing A/B testing, a lot of times we're doing A/B testing concurrently with our human judgment testing, right, which is what we call our crowdsourcing application. And so what that means is the faster I can get this done, the less likely I am to put into test an algorithm that doesn't work very well. And putting things into test costs money. You might not think about it. Yeah, it's free, right? Crowdsourcing costs money. I got to pay Crowdflower big heaps of money every time I do this. But not really. It's actually quite cheap. But anyway, compared to A/B testing looks like it has no upfront cost. But what if you're testing a dog, right? What if you're actually losing money on that test during the test period? It's true, right? Any time that you're showing a test that is not as good as control or not as good as the other variants, then that means you're actually losing money during that period of time. So that's actually a very important thing. And if we can make that, close that loop a little tighter, make that time lag a little shorter, make the feedback go a little faster, then I'm less likely to have a dog variant in test. And that means that I'm saving money in that respect. So it's worth spending a little bit of money up front to do your research, worth spending the money up front to do your crowdsourcing, your human judgment, so that you're not using your A/B testing framework, which I'm sure everybody has at this point, to test something that really just isn't as good as it could be. All right, so I'm hoping that gives you some insight into how you can leverage research to improve your crowdsourcing business. So using research, you want to make sure you've got the right questions of the right workers with the right data. And I know that spending time away from this sort of your core business seems a little painful, but it can really help you improve your crowdsourcing ROI. And in the long run, your business will be better off for it. So the next subject is a little bit more controversial, and this is particularly controversial for my vendor friends outside, hanging out here. So it's how vendor relationships are like a marriage. So how are vendor relationships like a marriage? Vendor relationships are based on trust. So you have to trust that they're acting in your best interest, and you have to trust, or they have to trust, that you'll act in good faith, right? So the idea, you don't want to have your vendors do a whole bunch of work for you and then be like, yeah, that was awesome, but you know what? We're not going to pay you for it, right? They have to know that you're going to come through in the end. A good marriage is based on mutually beneficial goals. So marriages don't last long if one of the spouses spends like a drunken sailor on shore leave, and the other one really is scrimps and saves. So the same kind of goes for your vendor relationships. If your goal is figuring out the human genome, then you want to make sure that your vendor is on board with that and is going to help you do that, right? So it could very well be, we'll show for Crowdflower one more time, and that is that when we were looking at removing spammers, if you think about it, an extra judgment for them is extra money that they get to keep. So throwing out spammers is actually kind of losing them a little bit of money. But the thing is that increase in quality, increase in trust is really valuable to them, right? So they have to be aligned with our strategic goals and our tactical goals with a particular test. And so they've been very good at that, and I think it's the last I will do my shilling for them. So finally, there has to be a little bit of give and take, right? There we go. There has to be a little bit of give and take. So don't just say, this is how it's going to be, right? I am the customer, and I am always right. By God, and of course everybody here knows that I am always right, but I'm still willing to take advice from my vendors and from other partners that I work with to figure out, all right, what's the best way to do this? Right, so you should trust their experience, right? Like I said, it's a relationship based on trust. Trust their experience, let them tell you what works, let them tell you what doesn't work. They've probably done this a time or two before. And if they say something is a good idea, try it out, see what works. So how can we get more differentiation on all of these questions? We went to them with this. We went to our vendors with those questions and had them help us figure it out. So, but there is one very key difference between vendor relationships and marriages. And that is that really you shouldn't have just one. Okay? So there's a lot of risk with having a single vendor supply your crowdsourcing needs. And what happens if they were to raise their prices, move into a different market niche, or God forbid, go out of business entirely? So you didn't promise that you would be with a particular vendor in sickness and in health. And if they're not meeting your needs, it's fine to go somewhere else and actually do work with another vendor. So maybe it's not what they're good at, right? It's not the kind of task that suits that particular vendor. And I think that's okay, right? It's okay not to be everything to everyone. So some vendors are better at certain tasks than others. Which brings me to my next point, which is the secret of a happy marriage is to find a wife or husband who cooks and cleans, find a wife or husband who makes good money, and find a wife or husband who's good in bed. Most importantly, never let those three people meet. So, of course, you shouldn't actually try that in matrimony, right? Don't do that. But it works in vendor relationships, and it makes sense. Find out who is the best for the particular task that you are working on. And so what does that mean for providers of our crowdsourcing insights? I think it's somewhat obvious at this point. The lesson is specialize. Find out what you're good at as a vendor, get really good at it, and provide that to your customers. And are you the best vendor in the world for microtasks? Are you the bee's knees in content generation? So, find a niche and own that niche. Build the tools to be successful in that niche. Know and understand that market, that particular piece of the pie like no one else can. And don't try to be all things to all people, or you end up being kind of nothing to no one. So working with the right vendor is really, really important for me. It should be really important for you as would-be crowd gurus within your own organizations. So it can really make or break your efforts. So choose wisely, but don't be afraid to cut and run. It's okay if the vendor can't do what you want them to do. It's all right to go find someone else who can provide that. Their job is to make you look smart, and your job is to help other people within your organization look smart through leveraging crowdsourcing data. So in summary, being a crowdsourcing guru, you want to BQ to your clients James Bond. Give them what they want, what they need, even if they don't know that they need it yet. Always be prepared. Do your research. It hurts. It takes time and money away from your core work. But just like eating your vegetables, like Mom said, it makes you stronger and smarter if you're asking the right questions of the right people using the right inputs. And finally, have a happy marriage with your vendors. Trust them, but keep your options open. Specialize. Find the vendor who specializes in what you need and let them help you. So any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to hit me up on my email, or you can get me via Twitter at @TooLateForAGoodName. And my final thought is that being a guru isn't about having all the answers, but about knowing what questions to ask. Thanks very much. And,